Hello. Today I would like to talk about history. Top 10 things Americans get wrong about their own history. Here in America, we think we know our stuff. But it turns out that there are a few things most people get wrong about U.S. history. From the settling of the continent to the Chicago fire, pop culture and sensational news have warped our view of history and kept misleading myths alive. If you're a history buff who knows everything on this list, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. But for the rest of us, here are 10 things that most Americans get wrong about their own history. The story. In 1492, Columbus cruised the sea blue, and turned into the principal individual to find America. How it really went. While the facts confirm that Columbus set sail in 1492, he wasn't the primary individual to arrive at the landmass. Obviously, Native Americans had just settled the zone a large number of years sooner, which in fact makes them the principal pioneers. In any case, overlooking that Columbus wasn't even the principal European, the honor of first European strides on American soil really goes to Leif Erikson, a Nordic Viking pioneer. Around AD 1000, Erikson cruised from Iceland to the New World. One variant of the story describes him getting lost in transit home from Norway and unearthing the landmass, while another case is that the disclosure was a purposeful conquest. Today, this fables has been sponsored up with science. New examinations have revealed certain qualities in the present current Icelandic individuals that can just originate from Native Americans. The lineage of these individuals goes back barely 1,000 years, precisely when Erikson left Iceland for the Americas. The story. The Salem witch preliminaries comprised of slaughtering witches by consuming charged ladies at the stake. How it really went. While numerous individuals partner witch with just ladies, there were additionally a significant number male survivors of the Salem witch preliminaries. Over the length of the disaster, 44 men were blamed for being witches and 5 of them were killed. Another lesser realized certainty is that none of the casualties were scorched at the stake. Rather, they by and large endured demise by hanging, with a couple of outstanding exemptions, for example, Mr. Giles Corey, who was squeezed to death with weighty stones. No one is totally certain what caused the attacks of the blamed witches. However, researchers are still effectively searching for answers. At present, the most conceivable hypothesis is that the town's gracefully of wheat may have been contaminated with a typical parasite considered ergot that causes retching, fits, and hallucinations. The story. On July 4, 1776, a gathering of conspicuous men marked the Declaration of Independence, a significant archive in the development of the United States of America. How it really went. Everything in this sentence is valid, aside from the date. The report was formally declared on July 4, which is the reason Americans observe Independence Day on that date. Yet, it wasn't until a month later that the report was marked incomplete. The Declaration of Independence was really marked on August 2, 1776. The Second Continental Congress initially casted a ballot the record into expert on June 2. Then they went through the following 2 days explaining the phrasing of specific parts. From that point onward, the record experienced a cycle of embellishing, and the completed duplicate was at long last fit to be marked 3 weeks after the fact. The story. Puritan Pilgrims left England and headed out to the United States for the headway of strict freedom. How it really went. While the facts demonstrate that the Puritans needed strict opportunity for themselves, they weren't searching for the partition of chapel and express that we find in America today. Actually, they vigorously aggrieved pretty much every different strict gathering in the provinces. The Puritans had an awful propensity for banishing any nonconformists to Rhode Island, which came to be called Rogues Island for that reason. Two of the most acclaimed instances of this are Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. Williams, an eager ally of strict resistance and generosity toward Native Americans, was abruptly ousted from Puritan lands in the dead of winter. With no place else to go, he got some land from Native Americans and established Rhode Island. Only a couple years after the fact, Anne Hutchinson was likewise exiled from Massachusetts in the wake of driving a progression of shocking gatherings. Her male partner, notwithstanding, was left unpunished. Innumerable stories like these show that the early Puritan states weren't as strictly lenient as most Americans accept. The story, Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over a light and began the Great Chicago Fire, how it really went. This fantasy was enormously advocated by a story in the Chicago Republican at the hour of the fire, and today, kids everywhere on the nation sing the appealing open-air fire tune. In any case, in 1911, the correspondent who at first composed the story admitted that he and a couple of companions had imagined everything. Nobody knows the genuine reason for the Chicago Fire, which consumed for 2 days in a row in October 1871 and caused $200 million in harm. While the beginning of the fire has been absolutely connected to the O'Leary horse shelter, each neighbor had an alternate story to tell about how the fire really began, including reckless smoking, meteors, and communist psychological oppressors. The O'Leary story is only one of these numerous legends.
Scientific discovery of our time.
The men from the stars, the creatures from the heavens.
They're coming!
They make them here.
We have many.
Envious eyes.
War of the Worlds, the true story.
The story, the radio station of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, was practical to such an extent that it caused widespread panic all through the country. How it really went today. Columnists have uncovered that a significant part of the craziness brought about by the transmission was dramatically overemphasized by the media. Reports from the New York Times and the Washington Post recounted accounts of ladies leaping out of windows, men having coronary episodes, and widespread panic in the roads. However, none of these accounts have ever been confirmed by clinical records or witnesses. In reality, students of history have discovered intentions in the news organization's adornment. The transmission happened at a pinnacle time when radio was taking steps to supplant papers, so anything these print organizations could never really down. Open trust of radio was a tremendous benefit. The story, the cowpokes of the Wild West were strange white men who worked alone. How it really went, other than Jamie Foxx's character in Django Unchained. You've presumably never observed a dark cowhand in traditional press. In any case, truly, a considerable lot of these men were of African plunge and hoping to get away from the sharecropping South, where financial open door for blacks was seriously limited. Being a cowpoke implied a troublesome vocation, driving steers over the American fields and into the Midwest where the interest for meat was high. The open door was ideal for some people of color searching for area freedom and a stable financial situation. As an outcome, 1 of every 4 American ranches was dark. Also, In light of the numerous perils related with this calling, cattle rustlers worked in enormous gatherings, not the only one like the TV saints we see in 20th century westerns. The story, The Alamo, was a battle of American grit and independence. How it actually went. Many people confuse the Texas Revolution with the Mexican-American War, which has led to a lot of misconceptions about the events at the Alamo. This battle was actually part of the Texas Revolution, when Texas fought for its independence from Mexico. It was completely separate from the Mexican-American War. At that time, Texas wasn't a state. The majority of the North actually opposed its entry into the Union because Texas would allow slavery. In fact, the U.S. officially recognized Texas as its own country in 1837. It wasn't until 1845, and after much debate, that Texas officially became part of the United States through annexation. So while the Alamo was a great part of the individual history of Texas, it didn't have anything to do with American patriotism or grit. The story. In 1775, Paul Revere took a 12 p.m. ride over the East Coast, shouting, "The British are coming," how it really went. This thought originates from the acclaimed sonnet, Paul Revere's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. While a significant number of his subtleties are exact, the absolute most notable parts are not. First and preeminent, his well-known expression, "The British are coming," was created after the function for sensational retelling. Right now, the pioneers actually viewed themselves as British, so this expression would have been befuddling and meaningless. Plus, this mission was intended to be as circumspect as could reasonably be expected, which implied no shouting in the roads. The other normal misinterpretation is that Revere rode alone. He really had two sidekicks, one of whom completed the ride after Revere was kept by the British. The story, The Emancipation Proclamation, given by Abraham Lincoln on the grounds of good integrity, finished American slavery. How it really went. Despite prevalent thinking, the great emancipator was fairly ethically undecided about bondage. Initially, he was important for the abolitionist bunch that forewarned against servitude's development, however didn't attempt to stop the current circumstance. This may appear to be conflicting with the Emancipation Proclamation, however the archive was really composed for political, not good, reasons. Lincoln even told the Bureau part that cancellation was a military need. We should free the slaves or act naturally subdued, even or the more critically. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on servitude status. It liberated slaves in the defiant states on paper, however the South was not at this point under the American government and had no motivation to follow its ordinances, while the record started huge quantities of captives to revolt and get away. There was no lawful change in their status because of this report. It wasn't until the 13th Amendment that subjugation formally finished in the United States. Lincoln's work established a solid framework for opportunity, however the report itself didn't free a solitary slave. Write in the comments on what topic you would like to see the video, and I'm already working on a new story. Don't forget to subscribe and like.